I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and today we are going to set up a Hydrosulfite Indigo Vat for the first of multiple different indigo dyeing videos that I plan to have on this channel. Indigo is a naturally occurring blue pigment, but the way that you need to set things up to dye yarn is a little bit different from a lot of other natural or commercial dyes we use here, where you can basically throw things together in a pot and you'll add color to your yarn. The blue indigo pigment that you are all aware of, this is the color that you see on blue jeans, is not soluble when it's in its blue form. You have to chemically reduce it in an environment without a lot of oxygen, which will transform this pigment into a soluble form that is like a yellowish green. And then in that environment, that's where you dye your fabric, your yarn, your fiber. And then when you return your dyed items to air, to oxygen, this pigment will oxidize back to the blue that you're familiar with. It's a lot of fun, and yeah, I can't wait to take you along on the journey. Today we're going to use the Jacquard Indigo tie-dye kit, and I can say that this is extremely easy to set up. This kit contains a synthetic form of indigo, which is the same molecule that is extracted from plants. It's just been created in a lab versus extracted from the plants. So I would still classify this as natural dyeing because you could use a plant extracted indigo and create a hydrosulfite vat like the one we will be setting up today. And I'll go into the contents of the kit more in a moment, but I'm happy to say that everything we need is included and it's also pre-measured. But if you want to learn more about the instructions in the process, you can go and download quick start and more detailed instructions on Jacquard's website. This video is not sponsored, but I will have links and affiliate links down in the video description so you can find some of my favorite tools and equipment. I mentioned that the Jacquard Indigo kit contains everything you need to make a hydrosulfite vat. It comes with 20 grams of the indigo dye, 50 grams of the reducing agent, sodium hydrosulfite, 100 grams of soda ash, a pair of gloves, and then some items that you could use for resist, wood blocks, sticks, and rubber bands. This is a little more useful if you want to dye fabric. And then there's some instructions to get started. The Jacquard Indigo kit has everything that you need for your chemicals and everything to easily set up your indigo vat. But here are some other tools and equipment that I find really helpful for the process. We have a 5-gallon bucket with a lid, and then this is a paint stir stick that is long enough so it can hit the bottom so I can stir the vat without having to stick my hand beneath the surface. I have a colander and an extra container right here. This I'll use when I remove items from the vat. I'm not going to want to squeeze it out back into there because dropping liquid into your indigo vat could introduce oxygen. So I'll be doing that over this bucket so that way it can have some place to drip. Now, speaking of going into the indigo vat, normally I use these nitrile gloves for a lot of the mixing, and these are a similar size to the ones that came in the Jacquard kit. But for indigo vats, and you can see how these purple gloves are very stained, I have these kitchen gloves that go up a little bit higher on my arm. And I like to use these because when I submerge the materials into the indigo bucket, then I can go a little bit deeper in without staining my skin. I will use my nitrile gloves for mixing up the chemicals, and that's why I brought in these like popsicle sticks or tongue depressors. You could use a dedicated dye spoon. All of the equipment is dedicated for dyeing yarn and is never used for food prep. But I plan to, rather than mixing the chemicals directly in the bucket, I'm going to mix them in this container where I have a little bit more control. I can dissolve them in hot water before adding them to the bucket. And so that is my preference. Since we're going to be dealing with dye chemicals, I will be wearing this well-fitting N95 mask when I am dealing with the dry powders. I also have a pair of safety glasses that I'll be wearing throughout the entire process. The only other materials that I will need that are on hand but off camera are my hose for water for filling the bucket, and I'll use that to help me rinse the yarn later on. And I do have an electric kettle that I'll use so that way I can make the water in the bucket warm, because otherwise it would be cold straight from the hose. I'll add hot water to it from my electric kettle so that way I can warm things up. I'm filming this outside in my driveway so that way if there's any spills or anything, I don't care. But if you're going to be setting this up indoors, you'll want a tarp or something so that way you can protect your work area so that way you don't splash indigo everywhere. Okay, the other thing about being outside is we're going to get neighborhood noises. The first thing we have to do is fill up the bucket. As I fill the bucket about 2/3 full, we will be adding more liquid with our chemicals, and I want to add some hot water to this just so that way it's warm versus cold. But notice the amount of aeration we're getting, and it's all that air that's being worked under the surface of the water. That's what we do not want while we have our vat going. We want to introduce as little air into the liquid as possible. My water here is not boiling, but it is hot. And let's see what this has done to the temperature of our water. Okay, I'm gonna bring out a little more warm water. I'd say we're not cold, we're like room temperature, so I will go ahead and boil the next batch just so that way we can heat things up a little more. It'll be fine. This is a super nice feature. The soda ash actually has all of the instructions written on it. We're gonna start with the soda ash, 100 grams of soda ash. And add this to our container, and then bring over our hot water so that way I can start dissolving it. Now, I don't know if all 100 grams of the soda ash will dissolve really well in here. We may need the more liquid, but at least we can get it started. But we want to start with first adding our soda ash, then our sodium hydrosulfate, and then finally I'll add our indigo. Okay, that's pretty well dissolved because I no longer see any particles. It is a little cloudy looking, but I think it's pretty well dissolved. Let's go over to the bucket. Some of that was bubbles from the water. It's even looking even more clear now. I'm gonna add this in. Stir things up. Okay, on to the next. We've got 50 grams of the sodium hydrosulfite. I think that this is the same compound that's in RIT color remover. And this one I'm gonna need to open up with some scissors because there was not a quick, like easy tear. But see the little bit of powder coming up? That's why you wear the safety glasses and respirator mask. You don't want to breathe any of this in. Now I'm going to use the same popsicle stick tongue depressor I used before. We're going to add hot water and stir. Now I want to mention that this kettle is a dedicated for dyeing kettle. Otherwise I would go in and transfer my water into another container entirely before bringing it out here. The first time I set up an indigo vat, it was a complete failure. I tried to do an iron vat, and so then I had all of this iron in solution that then I had to try to extract, and it was just nice and complicated. I was able to resurrect it in the end, so that is good, but it just took a while. Okay, not perfect, but the bigger container of water should help. You can see a bit why I think it would be a little bit more challenging for me to do this and to stir things up just directly in here. It's easier to at least get things nice and wet before bringing them over. Now right now as I'm stirring, that's introducing air. I think that that's okay for now because we'll give the vat time to settle after we do things. Now we need our indigo. Finally, we have our 20 grams of synthetic pre-reduced indigo. Now I believe, and I'll correct myself later if I'm wrong, but I believe that one of the reasons for this whole vat setup is that indigo is not soluble when it's oxidized, but it is when it is reduced. And so it is sort of like a suspension when it's in the blue color. And so we're going to want to get it suspended in the vat as well as we can. Okay, we need to go over to the vat. Mixing the indigo up like this may have been a mistake. Maybe because it's pre-reduced. Let's rinse this out. You live and learn. I don't think I've worked with pre-reduced indigo before. Okay. And now we're going to stir in one direction. And I want to try to not splash and introduce water. But we're stirring until sort of a whirlpool forms. Now the good news, and this is likely because there is some pre-reduced or we had the other chemicals in our container when we were starting. The good news, and I'm scraping the bottom of the stick with my sides because we're trying to get this all mixed up. The good news is things are looking really green right now. And so that is nice. Now I'm stirring all in one direction. And so when we stop stirring, we're going to let the vat sit for a little while, at least 30 minutes, maybe closer to an hour. Because that is going to allow, okay, I'm going to go in the reverse direction quickly, remove my stick, which is looking nice and green. We'll probably see that oxidize. And I'm going to put on the lid, but we're going to let things sit for a while now because we want both the indigo to reduce in the vat. We want to remove that oxygen from the area. But the second reason why we want it to sit is that if we have some of that indigo powder all mixed up in the solution, we want the indigo powder that is not reduced to settle to the bottom of our vat. And that will give us a more clear green liquid. But I'm talking, and as we have this little bit of time here, look at what's happening with our sticks getting more blue. I think it was a lot more green when we first took it out. And yeah, actually look right there. See this little line? It was attached to the lip of the bucket, and so therefore it didn't have access to oxygen, and so it wasn't oxidizing. And this means that things are going to work. We already have confirmation that things are going to go well, and I am so excited. But I'm going to wait at least 30 minutes, maybe closer to an hour, before we come and play with this. And the good news is that indigo vats can last for weeks. They can last for a long period of time. And if the color turns more blue, you can add more of the reducing agents. If you see that you're not getting as much color when you're trying to dye things, then you can add more of the indigo dye itself. And so there's all kinds of troubleshooting things that you can do. But even as I'm talking here right now, that lime green line is turning darker and darker and more blue. That is very exciting. And yeah, I guess I'll come see you in a little bit. This hydrosulfite vat is really best suited for dyeing cotton yarn. Because we have the soda ash in there, the pH is pretty high, which can be a little bit more, which can be damaging to wool and other animal fibers. You can dye wool in this type of vat, but various more experienced indigo dyers recommend that you have, say, a container of water with vinegar to dunk your yarn in after, I don't know how soon after you remove it from the vat. This is something that we'll have to try at a later date, but that can, I think, make things easier. Now, I have a lot of different indigo dyeing projects planned, but I'm going to be breaking them up into multiple videos because one thing I found when I'm doing research on different types of folding fabric and things like that for indigo vats, when there's multiple projects in one video, it's harder to quickly look, okay, this is how the fiber was prepared, this is how it looks in the end. You kind of have to go back and forth a little bit more. So I wanted to try to hopefully make things a little bit simpler. Today, we're gonna focus on basically kettle dyeing, vat dyeing, 200 grams of cotton yarn. One of them is simply cotton fingering. This is 100% cotton. And the other is Knit Picks Color Mist in a color name I actually don't remember at the moment. It'll be down in the video description, but it has these purple flecks in it. My apologies, they're doing construction on a new house across the street, so I am working around a truck beeping. But Comfy Color Mist is 75% cotton, 25% acrylic. Now, to limit the amount of oxygen we introduce into our vat, again, we don't want to stir it very vigorously, but you also want to pre-soak your yarn and fiber. There could be techniques that you might want to do dry, but if you're dyeing a lot, pre-soak it first, so that way you're not going to be introducing air into the environment. So I added all the different fiber I had prepped into a separate 5-gallon bucket, filled it up with water, and I attempted to press it down, but some cotton yarn isn't as absorbent as others. And so even though I kept trying to weigh it down with a pasta insert, that kept popping back up. So yeah, things took a little bit of time, but I did let everything pre-soak for at least a day before we got started with our indigo dyeing. It's been about an hour, and let's look at how blue our stick is now. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna set it aside. Got my safety glasses on. We're gonna take our lid off of our vat. Ooh, look at that flower in the center. Ooh, hoo, hoo. Okay, I'm gonna bring over my colander so we can have this ready to go. All right, and so now I'm going to carefully push that to the side. Ooh. See if I move the film, see how our water looks green underneath the surface. Ugh, I got some film on my hand, but I guess that's just gonna have to be what it is. Okay, so now I've got our yarn here. This is what's swished fingering. I'm gonna squeeze out the water, and while I'm still squeezing, I'm gonna come over and submerge this in the bucket. And with it under the surface, oops, there's still some air in there. I'm squeezing the yarn and releasing. And we're gonna do this over the course of about a minute. When I keep bringing it to the surface, you can see that it is nice and green. We don't want it to hit the bottom of the pan because we don't want to introduce like the sediment into it, and we also don't want to introduce too much air into the pot. So you can't really see what I'm doing, but I'm squeezing and releasing to allow it to soak up liquid and just to hang out down here. Now I don't have a timer, so I don't know how long it's been. I can see on the camera, okay, it's been 2 minutes, 26 seconds. So I think we'll do this for maybe about a minute. And you can do multiple dips, but it's important to remember that the color on your yarn is gonna look darker while it is wet than it is when it's dry. Now my hands are feeling wet. I'm a little nervous that my gloves are leaking right now. All right, I'm gonna remove the yarn. Oh, I should have squeezed it as I removed it and I didn't. So now that I'm over here, over the strainer, I'm gonna squeeze that water out, but look at how beautiful and okay, yeah, my gloves were leaking. Crap, I got it all over me. Okay, we've got this beautiful color that is already oxidizing. Oh dear. And my hand is blue. So this is all we're gonna do today. I should have checked how well these gloves were done. Okay, these gloves are dead. I'm gonna need to get a new pair. Well, and that's that, everyone. Okay, I will be back outside in a minute with fresh gloves to look at our yarn, but let me go scrub my hand. Well, look at my hand. But look at this blue here. Okay, I'm gonna lift by the zip tie to move. There are still some areas that are green. Let me zoom in. We totally missed being able to do a time lapse looking at this. Oh my gosh. I can't believe it, you guys. Okay, So those last little green bits will turn more blue, but this is why you're supposed to wait a little bit of time before doing your next dunk. But I just made a mess out of absolutely everything. Oh my gosh. Oh gosh. Okay. I'm gonna go clean up a little bit. We'll come back. Hey, that green spot's not there anymore. But first, our color mist, I'm just bringing over some water so it can stay damp. Because I think it has a little bit of indigo residue on it, and I don't want to put this back in the pre-soak bucket with the rest of the yarn. So I'm going to set this aside along with our bucket. A huge round of applause to professional Rebecca, because I could not tell editing the footage how angry I was that my glove failed. I was angry for a few reasons. One, I dyed my hand, and that blue hand looked like a zombie hand for 3 days or so. It did come off eventually. My hands look great now. But I was also upset because I didn't have another pair of long gloves, which meant I didn't have a good way to continue with dyeing that day. So I did buy more pairs of gloves. We'll wash that first yarn in a moment, and then we'll talk about resetting the vat to dye on another day. But I was really angry. The other reason why I declared we're done, besides the gloves and everything, is that sometimes when I am filming a video and I make a really big mistake, like not checking to make sure my gloves were still watertight before using them, sometimes it's best to step away for a little bit. And that's exactly what I did. And now I'm gonna move this over. Okay, and let's take a closer look at our yarn. Let's see, ooh, we do still have some green sections. And look, ooh, I wonder if those areas are a little drier too. Ooh, see, as I move it, I'm seeing lots of bright green. Ooh, because it's not exposed to air yet. Oh, cool. Okay, let's see if I can squeeze more water out of this. Okay. Do you see that green? I can't tell what you can see on camera. That's so cool. I mean, we've got a beautiful, beautiful color here, even from our first dip, but see how we've got some tonal variation. We've got this patch in here that's definitely going to be much lighter. And oh, funny, we definitely have some green liquid in the bucket. I'm not going to pour that back in. Okay, but here you can see some of the lighter blue area. Okay, we are going to attempt to clean up, and I'm going to set things aside so we can do this another day, which we'll probably start with stirring our vat and then waiting 30 minutes before starting. But I'm going to clean up a lot and then come back. I'm going to need to bring out another pair of gloves, but I got rid of the liquid at the bottom of the bucket. There's just a tiny bit down there right now. And I'm going to take a step back with my hose. Nope. And we're gonna start spraying and promptly knock things over. Fine. We're gonna start spraying. There we go. I'm curious how much color is in that water, and the answer is a fair amount. Okay, I'll be right back. We'll try this again. There we go, let's spray it again. Knock things over, that's okay. Okay, the water still looks a little dark, but it's lighter. I can tell it's a bit lighter. Just to show you when there's a little bit of water, see how through here I can see the bottom? It's still quite blue, but it's clearer. Okay, at this point, I'm gonna come and squeeze it manually, which I haven't been. And that's looking light blue when I squeeze that way, but you can see that we're gonna have a ton of washing to do. Oh my goodness. I'll continue this off camera. And actually, in the meantime, I'm gonna pop this into this basin of water to just soak. Okay, and so we can see there's bleeding, but I'm just gonna give this some time to soak. I brought this inside. This is after soaking for a while. The good news is that touching this isn't turning my hand blue at this stage. Oh, whoops, we don't want this in here. Okay, and we're gonna start using soap. My blue hand is still blue, but a little bit less blue. Okay. But I figured that maybe coming and washing this would help me rinse off my hand as well. Alright, I switched to using Synthropol, which is a good soap for dyeing dyed textiles. And adding that seemed to cause more bleeding, which is a good thing because we're still getting a little bit here. There's still a little bit of Synthropol in the water. But things are definitely getting better and better and better. Alright, let's do a tiny bit. Synthropol is very drying to your hands. I only want to add like a drop. I think at one point I added way too much. Okay, and we're going to fill the basin up. I think this is the third time I've used Synthropol. I've used dish soap a number of times. But actually, I mean, we still have some color in there, but clearly things are improving and are getting better, which is good. Really good. Way less. Okay, I'm gonna leave the yarn in here to soak for a couple of hours while I leave home to go work on another project. So I'm gonna fill this all the way up with water, and then I'll see you in a little bit. The good news through all of this is that I'm not seeing any dye transfer to my clean hand, and maybe the staining on my dirty hand is decreasing. I mean, I'm still blue, but the color is not rubbing off onto this hand, but I am seeming to be able to wash it. Oh man, see you in a couple hours. Many hours later, let's see. Oh my gosh, I think we're probably pretty good. I know this is gonna feel so much darker, or so much lighter once it's dry. Let's fill this with water one more time. This is giving me faith that it's gonna take a long time to rinse, but doing a lot of rinses outside is a very good thing. I mean, there's the tiniest hint. I'll rinse it one more time to get the soap off. Then I'm going to go ahead and put this yarn through the spin dryer and hang it up to dry. We're about a week later, and my hand is back to regular color. And I've now got these gloves that are, doesn't smell very good. These gloves go up to my elbow. The good news, things are still looking green. Okay, I'm stirring it in one direction. We're going clockwise. And then I'm going to drag it the other direction, pull the stick out. I see tons of particles floating around in there beneath the surface, which I'm sure you can't see, but I think that's the reason why now that I've stirred things up, we want to wait 30 minutes before I come and add anything into it, because we don't want those insoluble particles to get over anything. So I'm going to take these gloves and sort of loosely tie them around the handle, I guess. I've got a whole box of them. And yeah, we'll come back in 30 minutes or so. Okay, I am double gloved. And let's see. Let's try to scrape the film to the side best I can. Alright, now I'm going to take, this is the Comfy Color Mist yarn. I believe it's 25% acrylic. And I'm going to squeeze out all that water. And while it's squeezed, I'm going to submerge into the green liquid. And fingers crossed that this time I'm not turning my hands green. I am double gloved, but look, you can see there's some particles in the water. Maybe that's what's on the surface. They're getting on the gloves. And beneath the surface here, I'm trying to keep a good handle on the yarn so that way I don't have it dragging against the bottom or against the sides, but I'm kind of squeezing and releasing, squeezing and releasing. And now, I don't know how long it's been, maybe not that long, but we got a lot of color on our first skein, so I'm going to squeeze again and remove straight over here. And look at this change. Haha, this time we're not dripping. Look how green we are, but it's quickly turning blue. Oh, this has gone so much better this time. Oh my goodness. Okay, I don't want to drip on myself. Let's pull off my gloves carefully. We're gonna cover our vat. And I'm gonna move this since I squeezed it, we're not getting a lot of drips. So let's transfer this yarn, which is quickly turning navy, into this pan where maybe you can see a little better. Maybe. But you can see that there's still a lot of green areas that still need to be oxidized. But this worked more like what I was expecting. I was considering giving this one more than one dunk, and there's a little bit of sunlight, but I actually don't think I will, because you know what? I'm not really seeing that purple anymore. And so I don't know if we've completely covered it up. Maybe I see a couple of hints. Oh man. Okay. I guess I'm gonna let this sit and I'm gonna go and get more yarn that I plan to dye. Oh, I'm so excited. It hadn't been very long, but it looked almost done and I picked it up and there's a little bit of green up there. Not a big deal. I'm just gonna set this aside. I washed our Comfy Color Mist along with some 10-gram mini skeins that I dipped into the vat between 1 and 8 times. I'm going to talk about the project with multiple dips in its own video because otherwise this video would become over an hour and I don't think we want that. But there are 2 ways that you can deepen the color of your indigo dyed yarn. One is that you can let your yarn oxidize completely by waiting anywhere between like 5 and 30 minutes. I think they recommend closer to the 30 minutes, but sometimes I would do it after I no longer see any green. And you can do that multiple times, and each time you'll be building up the color more and more. The other variable I do think makes a difference on the depth of color is how long you have your yarn submerged in the indigo vat. And that is not a variable that I have played with yet, but if you want to see me play with that variable, well, please leave a comment down below. And while you're at it, subscribe and turn on notifications. As for the washing, it went very similar to the first skein that I showed in this video, which is why I'm talking about other things while showing the washing right here. But I am pleased to say that by the end of the washing, when I put the yarn into my spin dryer to remove a lot of the liquid, almost no blue came out then, and so that made me so happy. The Simply Cotton Fingering colorway that I dyed is one of the darkest that I got, even though I only did 1 dip. And I think that something I need to explore at some point is to explore the length of time I have the yarn submerged and I'm squeezing it in the dye bath, and also look at the number of dips. Because yes, this is the first one that I dipped. The dye bath was the most fresh. In theory, our indigo was the most concentrated, but I don't know how much of a difference that makes compared to the length of time I had it in the vat. Because I definitely had this in the vat for more than a minute, and a lot of other things I think I did like 20 to 30 seconds. I feel like I've had enough content in this video that the video where I have mini skeins and I'm going to dip them multiple times, I think I'm dividing that into an entirely separate video, just so that way this one can be about successfully setting up a vat / dyeing my hand. Oh dear. the Comfy Color Mist also was just one dip into the vat, but it was days later, and I don't know if I did it for as long. So maybe you could make a lot of conclusions here, which I don't know how accurate they are, because I could consider other variables. I've been told that an indigo vat lasts for long periods of time. If the color shifts more blue, you don't have that yellow-green, you can add more of the reducing agents. If your yarn is coming out lighter, you can add more dye. Well, I don't think I did anything else in between the first and the second. Maybe I did the first round of the minis. I don't remember, but the color is lighter, significantly lighter. So we don't know if it has to do with it being a different day. Maybe the outdoor temperature was a different temperature, so the vat had a different temperature. Maybe I squeezed it less. There are all these different variables I could list as potentially contributing to the color. And I honestly don't know. I can hypothesize, but I don't know for sure. What I can say is that when you're dyeing in an indigo vat, you're really dyeing by feel, and you should stop once you're satisfied with the finished color. Oh, of course, fiber content. Color Mist is 25% acrylic. Of course, that's another huge reason why it's not going to feel as pigmented and deep, because I don't think we're dyeing that acrylic with the indigo. Can't believe I forgot about the most important variable that we have. Maybe in some of the lightest areas you can see a hint of that purple, but that purple in the Color Mist really was not enough to overcome most of the blue. I do have another project I dyed with the same yarn, and there, because there was more resist in the project, you get some of those speckles coming through. So you can absolutely over dye lots of different colorways in the bath, but the intensity of the indigo, even if it's not that dark, like right here, does contribute to things. I plan to put all of these indigo dyeing adventures into a single playlist and in my Dyeing Yarn with Natural Dyes playlist. I think that's what I've titled it. I'll link both of the playlists down in the video description. And I really hope you bear with me as I divide up the different projects, because I want it to be really easy for people to find the resist or the technique that I'm doing with the yarn, the dyeing of the yarn in the vat, and then the finished yarn all in one video. I mean, if I do shibori on fabric, which I do plan to do, I'll probably have all those in one video, but I think this means that when I go into the conclusions, I'm gonna put like, this is how I folded it, this is, you know, I'm gonna try to link things together so that way, I don't know, that way it's easier and you're not jumping around the video. So that is my intent for dividing everything up. Plus, if I put all of these projects in one video, it would be really, really long. Like, I have a feeling that this video is really long, but also I know I'm gonna do the indigo vat setup in real time, whereas in the other videos, I'm planning to make a, not time lapse, but a voiceover summary of the setup process. And my blue hand may not make an appearance in every video. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and I have the indigo vat still set up outside, and I have more jacquard indigo kits, so I could set it up again if that first bath goes bad, or I can easily adjust it. Not that you need to purchase multiple kits, but circumstances meant I ended up with 3. So one of them was old, and I didn't have the instruction booklet in there anymore, so that's why I bought a new one. But then Knitpick sent me another one, and so I have a lot. I am Rebecca from ChemKnits, and please subscribe and turn on your notifications so you never miss a new video. In addition to these indigo projects we have coming up, I have also been exploring with other natural dyes, logwood, madder, weld, or 3 that are videos in progress. And of course, I also dye with acid dyes, food coloring, fiber reactive dyes. I like to explore different ways to apply color to yarn. And subscribing is the biggest way you can help support the channel. If you want early access to some of the ChemKnits content, go and check out the ChemKnits Patreon. There's a lot of really cool perks, and it's just another way that you can help support everything here directly. You can find me on social media. I have links and all kinds of information down in the video description. So if you ever want to learn more about a project, it's a handy place to check out. I do try to keep track of everything down there. Thank you so much for watching.